Just a comment about American voting and how states swing from red to blue. There was a comment by Ted Cruz recently about how Texas is likely to be swung to the Democrats through the hard left. And as an Australian, I looked at this and I thought, hang on, that doesn't make any logical sense. Elections are won in the middle, not at the edges. But this illustrates a stronger point about the American system, which is particularly strange. Well, actually, most countries are like this, right? You don't have compulsory voting. Now, lack of compulsory voting is problematic because an economist will tell you it's never rational to vote, right? Just like it's not really rational to wear a seatbelt. We're really bad at assessing low probabilities. Well, similarly with voting, we believe that our vote doesn't make a difference because we're just one out of many. And that means a lot of rational people, usually the rational middle, don't have an incentive to attend elections in voluntary voting situations. And that's actually bad for society because in a country like Australia, and okay, I'm biased, I grew up here, but you look at the you compare the outcomes of these systems. In Australia, voting's compulsory. That means it doesn't really depend on turnout. It doesn't depend on riling up your base because the base has to go anyway, as does everybody else. It actually comes down to convincing the people in the middle, convincing those people who I would argue are more rational, because I think of myself as a centre-right voter, so I'm a centrist, I guess. Abhor extremes. So in Australia, in order to win, you have to convince that middle to swing across to your side. So you're looking at the moderates. Elections are won with the moderates, the rationals, the people who are hopefully rational. Hopefully they're weighing up policy, and sometimes sometimes they'll vote Liberal, sometimes they'll vote Labor. I mean, I have voted Labor twice in my life, but generally I am right of centre. So it's intriguing that somebody like Ted Cruz can say Texas is going to be swung blue because of the hard left. And unfortunately, in the US, it works. I mean, the American system militates in favour of extrema having impact, right? In order to win the Democrat primary, you've got to rile up the Democrats. And how do you do that? Well, certainly by going to the left, because that's, the people on the left have nowhere else to go. So you rile them up, they're going to come and vote for you. And if you're a Republican, you want to rile up the right. So the American primary system, with the exception of California and other places that do it slightly differently, the American primary system actually militates towards extrema facing off. And so Americans wonder why nobody crosses the aisle or there's no spirit of consensus or cooperation. Dudes, your electoral system motivates people to be extremists. Whereas ours, look, I would say we have a variety of views, certainly represented in elections. We've had a few radicals come up from both ends of the spectrum. But elections are basically decided in the middle, and I actually think that's a good thing. Anyway, so interesting to see which way Texas goes. Oh, one other thing that I find really weird about America. Red is usually the colour of socialism, right? So, every time Americans say turning a state red, they mean right-wing, whereas I sort of think left-wing. And let's be careful about that, right? There's really no left-wing parties in the American system. I mean, if you took the Republicans and the Democrats, both of those would fit, I think, within our Liberal Party. I don't think there's any parties there as left as... I'm not saying our Labor Party's left. Well, it is. They're left of centre, but I don't think they have any parties there as left as the Australian Labor Party. Perhaps some components of the Democrats are, but, the Democrats are a broad church. And the Republicans for a long time have also been a broad church. I mean, I'm really disappointed to see what's happened to the Republican Party over the last few years. They've moved, if you're familiar with the concept of the Overton window, they have moved the Overton window to the right. And that's actually they've probably stretched the Overton window. Otherwise, how would you explain Bernie Sanders having a viable candidacy? Anyway, just my rant for today.